really grateful that you are here for what now is going to be kind of our last installment of this series where we've just been talking about how do we redefine normal in our culture and in the day. Like there's always two normals at play. There's a normal, just kind of in the way in the world, what the Bible calls the pattern of the world or the system of the world, the way of thinking of the world. We're all born into that way. That's the most natural way we live. But then there's Jesus who comes along and really redefines all of that and says, let's just do something completely different. Let's go back to really the normal that I designed to begin with, and let's find the life and the traction and the energy inside of that. And to help us just kind of begin to get our minds there, I want to take you way back in time. I won't tell you how many years back in time, but the summer I turned 20, so I'll let your imagination run with how long ago you think that might be. I'll just say to you, for the sake of my own children, when I was 20, yes, movies were in color, okay? That was the thing they always asked. When you were a kid, were movies black and white? No, they were not, most of them. So when I was, summer I was 20, I was with a really big group of people, it's probably about 25 of us, and we were at a water park. And I like water parks. I like that whole environment. Any water park fans? I just like water parks. And we all kind of piled into the wave pool, which can be a great place, right? I mean, the wave pool is fun, especially if you get one of those floats, you just kind of hang out, right? And it's great. And so we're all out there just kind of messing around, and there's no waves in the moment. But then, like the wave pool, you know how it works, right? There's like and here come the waves, right? It's like this little warning that if you were in the wave pool but didn't want waves for some reason, you should get out because here they come. And so the horn goes off and the waves come. And this group of us, most of us realized there's this one guy, his name happened to be John too. And John had been one of a guy who, when I was a middle schooler, John was a guy who had invested in a group of me and my friends as a middle schooler. And now I'm 20, and John was a really cool guy and had this impact on my life. Well, John's on a tube in the wave pool, and several of us are not. And so we decide we will take John's tube. We will tip John over and get him off the tube. And some of that was like fair play, because when we were middle schoolers, John was like always playing jokes on us and always, so we're like, look, we're all old enough now, let's get John back. Like, let's go tip him over. And so we surround John's tube in the wave. I mean, the waves are just rolling, right? And we start rocking John's tube. And John's not a huge guy, but he's got some weight and significance and strength to him. And so it's getting a little harder, and we're not quite tipping him over. And at one point, this tube starts to get some momentum to tip over a little bit. And I'm like, this is the moment. We have arrived. We've done this thing. And so I dive under the water because I'm going to just tip it the rest of the way, right? And I get down and I push off the bottom of that wave pool and I push back up and I tip. The only problem was that at some point while I was under the water, somehow the momentum had shifted back, and either somebody had hit him from the wrong direction or grabbed hold of the tube, and the tube's coming back down. So now I'm under the tube, and it's kind of knocked me back down a little bit. And all of a sudden, I find myself in this place where I'm under the tube, and everywhere I go, it feels like the tube goes with me. And there's all my friends around the tube and all of their legs. I can't get out from underneath the tube. And it quickly feels like I've been under there for hours, okay? It's milliseconds, but it quickly feels like I've been under there forever. And so I'm like scratching and clawing, and there's all these legs flailing about. I'm getting kicked and everything. I'm like, in my mind, I'm starting to panic just a little bit, think I've got to get out from underneath this tube. And eventually I peel through like a couple different sets of legs, and I get out, and I kind of bounce myself off the bottom of the wave pool, but I am spent. I mean, I am tired. I had used all the energy I had to try and knock John off the tube, and then to try and just like stay with it and get out from these things. I'm so tired, but I'm trying to bounce off the bottom of this wave pool to keep getting my head back above water just to catch my breath. And at one point, I glance up and I hear this real short whistle, the real short lifeguard whistle. And I kind of glance, and the lifeguard, and I can see the lifeguard looking at me and saying, I can't hear his words, but I can read his lips saying, "Are you okay?" I'm like, dude, I'm 20, I'm fine. You ever met a 20-year-old? I'm fine, I'm okay. Like, just put your whistle in your pocket, okay? I'm fine. But I'm tired. Like, I really am. Like, I'm thinking, how long ago did that horn go off? How long do I have to wait for these waves to die down, right? And so I just continue to try to bounce, but I'm getting more and more tired, and my bounces are getting less and less. And then the next thing I hear is two terrible sounds in a wave pool. It's the long lifeguard whistle and the horn that stops the waves. And at about the time I'm hearing this, it all feels like one blurry moment smushed together. About the time I'm hearing those, I feel this against my chest. I feel the nice little soft, squishy lifeguard life-saving device. That was me. I was suddenly that guy. The guy I had never wanted to be. The guy nobody ever really wants to be. And so you know kind of what happens is when they, if you've never been saved in a wave pool before, let me help you out here. What happens is you have to leave the pool. You have to go sign a document, some kind of release form, or you're not going to sue them for everything they're worth or whatever, right? I'm like, I'm fine. But no, you got to walk out, and you got to go out, and so you got to do the walk of shame okay? And look, if you've done it and it wasn't a walk of shame, kudos to you, because it just was to me. And so I'm walking up, and it's at that point that I actually kind of look over and really look at the lifeguard who's walking with me. And here I am, 20-year-old John, walking out of here, completely embarrassed, shame. And I look over and I'm like, oh my gosh, this kid could be 12. Are you kidding me? I mean, I'm sure he wasn't. That wouldn't have been allowable, but it sure felt like that. I'm like, that's even worse. And so here's the reality was, maybe I really needed it. Maybe I don't know what kind of condition I really was in. I know I was really tired. I don't know how much time I had. I'm not an amazing swimmer, so it wasn't like I was going to, maybe I really needed it. But because the reality was, in that moment, those waves, they were just overtaking me. I mean, I was being overcome by the waves. I just was. I mean, even if I don't want to admit it, okay? Even if now today, 25-year-old me doesn't want to admit it, I was being It's not that funny, dude. It's not that funny. I was being overcome by them. I mean, they were just overtaking me. The waves were overcoming me. And when something overcomes you, in a negative context like that, when something overcomes you, it overcomes you with this unspoken ability, and if it's a living thing, even desire, to destroy you, to incapacitate you, to neutralize you, to ruin the course, to get you off the course. I mean, to be overcome by the waves. At the end of the day, it could have been disastrous, right? Because that's a little bit what happens. Well, maybe you can feel that a little bit. Maybe you can just kind of put yourself in the wave pool with me a little bit, and you can feel the waves overcoming. And listen, we've got all sorts of waves in life. It's just part of life, okay? Even in good times, there's some waves that are coming. Even in times where the world is at peace, there are some waves that are coming. And the design or the intention of those waves, it can be to overcome you. It can literally be to destroy, to just pull the legs out from underneath you, to rip the momentum of your life away. And if you flip to Romans chapter 12, which is where we've been the last few weeks in the New Testament of our Bible, in Romans chapter 12, again, this guy Paul writing about, hey, this is how we're going to live this normal of Jesus, not the normal of the world. Let's redefine what normal can be. And while you're turning there, I want to just jump ahead and I want to show you the last verse of this section of Paul's letter. Okay, what we have is chapter 12. Paul's like bringing a little bit of a thought together here, kind of closing a thought at the end of this section of the letter. And this is what he said in Romans chapter 12, verse 21. He says, hey, I know you're living in a chaotic time, but don't be overcome by evil. Instead, the alternative is overcome evil with good. Don't be destroyed by evil. Don't be overwhelmed by evil. Don't be overrun by evil so much then that you are influenced by evil. Don't let evil take your life and become your life. Instead, you overcome the wave of evil with good. I was like, Paul's acknowledging, there's hard, there's challenge in life. There are some things that are difficult. There are some things that could overrun you. And so what you got to understand, because of the place in the letter, what Paul's saying is what's normal is for you to be overcome by evil. What's normal is for culture and the world, just the way the world works, the way the world works separated from God, the way we live separated from God, is we get overcome by evil. We get caught up in evil, and we start trying to overcome evil with evil, which never really works. Evil multiplies evil. Evil doesn't overcome evil. And so Paul's writing in this context, he's saying, oh, okay, like, look, just, now, we started this little conversation through this chapter several weeks ago, and we started right in verse 1. And I want to just share verse 1 with you. I want to go all the way back to the beginning, but I want to read this to you from the Message translation because this sets so much of the context of what Paul's writing in, and it'll give us some understanding. And I didn't share this one layer of context with you when we started the series. Here's what the Message translation of this says. Take your everyday, just your ordinary life, right? Like, you're sleeping, you're eating, you're going to work, you're doing your normal things, you're going to the store, you're walking around, you're walking the dog, you're mowing the yard, like going to school, taking a test. Take all the things in your life that are just feel ordinary and place them before God as just an offering, that's your spiritual act of worship. That's what is reasonable and logical worship in light of who God is. Just your ordinary, everyday life. And the reason Paul wrote it is because these people, these early followers of Jesus living in Rome, they were literally having to make that choice. Will I do very ordinary things? Will I protect my ability to do very ordinary things, even if it means I somehow don't offer the whole of my life to Jesus? This is how practical it was. When you went into a marketplace, in this part of first century Rome, when you went into a marketplace because you wanted to sell whatever your goods were, or you wanted to buy other people's good, if you wanted to buy and sell and trade in the marketplace where you would have gotten your food, where you would have gotten your clothing, where you would have gotten whatever it is you needed, if you wanted to do that, what you had to do is you had to stop by a little altar at the entrance to the market, and you had to throw on some incense or throw in a little bit of offering of worship to the Roman god of choice. Might have been Caesar, might have been something they called a Baal, might have been a god of fertility, right? Whatever god they were choosing, you had to offer a little sacrifice to that in order to participate in the market. Imagine with me for a second, if for you to get to work, you had to pay a sacrifice to another god. If for you to get your paycheck, you had to sacrifice to another. That's what they're living in. And it feels like so 2,000 years ago, right? Even right now, this just started again in the last month or so. Right now, in the western side of the country of India, there are followers of Jesus who are being literally kicked out and prohibited from re-entering the marketplace because they're followers of Jesus. They're losing their ability to buy food, to earn money, simply because they're identifying as followers of Jesus. That's today. That's happened more in the last 24 hours. That's happening right now. It feels so far removed, right? It's happening to people who breathe and walk around like you and I do, right now. And listen, and part of the reason it's so important because while we may not be asked to stop and offer a tangible, visible sacrifice like that somehow to get into work or to get into school, and some of you who are in school wish you could, because then you'd just say no and you'd never have to go to school again. I get it, right? But it's not that blatant for us yet. Might become that, but it's not that blatant for us yet. But the question becomes, where are we invited to respond to evil in our world with more evil? And that becomes our sacrifice to somebody other than Jesus. Paul's honest. Look, it's challenging. You're living in a challenging time, challenging circumstance. Don't be overcome. Don't let the wave of that evil overtake your life, because evil multiplies evil. But doesn't drive evil out. It doesn't overcome evil in any way. So let's talk real tangibly. What does Paul talk about? So Romans chapter 12, we're going to jump in verse 14. So it's about 2/3 of the way through this chapter that you'd find yourselves in. Verse 14, this is what Paul writes about this whole thing. Again, he's been writing about the last couple of paragraphs about belonging and understanding who you are as a follower of Jesus and how we belong to each other as followers of Jesus. And that's very, very different. Here's what he says in verse 15. Now this challenge that you're living in, I want to invite you to do what Jesus did and bless those who persecute you. Bless them. Don't curse them. Bless them. Don't curse them. And that's very Jesus, right? Jesus, who when staring down his own crucifixion, didn't defend himself, didn't accuse other people, didn't try and get himself out. He just willingly said, look, I'm not going to respond to evil with evil. Paul says, let's live like that. Let's let that be normal. Normal right now is just let's respond to evil with evil, but let's go back to a Jesus normal and let's actually bless those who persecute you or cause you hardship or who just make life challenging for you. Shrink it down a little bit. Just bless the people who even just get under your skin. You got anybody that gets under your skin? You share a roof with anybody that gets under your skin? Yeah. Paul's like, let's bless those people. Let's bless, not curse. What does it mean to bless? Let me help you just see this. Bless actually has a couple components. It is first and foremost, it is to want the salvation of somebody else. When we bless somebody, what we are praying and wanting is first and foremost their salvation, them to be united with the Jesus who gave himself up, not just for us, but for them. Not just for you, but for them. To bless them and then to want good for their life. To bless them is to actually want their salvation and then want good for their life. Just imagine, see, that's a little bit challenging. I have other things I want to say to people who drive me nuts. Right? I have other things I want to say to people who have lied about me and tried to ruin my name or have worked against. I have other things I want to say about those people and to those people. And yet that's just evil trying to overcome evil. And evil doesn't overcome evil. Evil just multiplies evil. But what would it look like to wish they're good? Let's go real far. Let's just go real big and let the world be as big as it is right now. With all of the conflict in the world, what would it look like to actually pray and want a blessing for people at the center of conflict and unrest? Let's make it super, super clear. What would it look like right now to actually want the blessing of salvation for somebody like Putin? Now, before you freak out and post that on YouTube and with a comment, let me help you. That's not the condoning of action. It's not the condoning of thought. It's the acknowledgement that thought and action are wrong and somebody needs something. And somebody needs something bigger than just a human wisdom. And somebody needs something bigger than just an earthly expression of power. What would it look like to actually want the salvation of the people that look, again, maybe it's just me. What would it look like to want the salvation of people that it is often just easier to want their destruction? Again, you might be way more holy than me in that. And if so, that's good for you. But what would that look like? Maybe you just shrink it to inside of our country and the group of people who don't think like you or don't act like you or push against you or who you think are corrupting the society. What would it actually look like to want their blessing, to not curse them, to not try and tear them down, to not lead with judgment, but to actually give a blessing, to actually be tangible in it. Let's shrink it even further, just inside your own sphere of influence in your own family group. And that's really where people get under our skin, right? Inside, the closer you get, right, the more we love people and the more we have impassioned responses against people, right? Just what does that look like? What would it look like to say, actually, I want a blessing for that. I want it to go well with them. I want, right? Let's go even a little further. What about just you? What about sometimes when you're your own worst enemy? What about sometimes when you speak that the person that speaks the most evil about you is you? What would it look like to just want a blessing for yourself? So how do we make it really tangible? Again, you can pray this blessing. When's the last time you just prayed the blessing? When's the last time you just prayed a blessing for somebody in a seat of influence that you radically disagree with and that you might even think is evil or doing evil things, intentionally or unintentionally? When's the last time you prayed a blessing as opposed to nicknaming them in a slanderous way or commenting in a, right? In fact, I just challenge us. Before we say another negative thing about somebody, what if we pray a prayer blessing? And before we post or broadly communicate another negative thing, what if we sent them a prayer? I mean, that's just all sorts of uncomfortable because it's just easier to say the other stuff. Right? And what if we sent them a prayer for their good and for their vibrancy? Not what if we sent them a prayer that was actually like a list of our judgments against them cloaked in spiritual language and prayer. What if? We can pray a blessing. You can speak a blessing. We literally can, just with our words. We can speak a blessing. We can speak a blessing about somebody. We can speak life-giving hope and truth about somebody. If we can't do it to them, we can do it about them. Sometimes we can just be a blessing. You can pray a blessing, speak a blessing, be a blessing. Just the gift of your presence can be a blessing. The gift of your presence sometimes with the person who is working against you, the way you respond to them at work, the way you live with them at school, the way you share the home with them, it can be a blessing. Just pray a blessing, speak a blessing, be a blessing. But how? Let's even go a little further because Paul talks about it some in the very next line. The next two lines, he helps us see this a little bit. Verse 15, rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. I mean, celebrate with people who are celebrating, and when they're grieving, grieve. Now, a lot of times you might hear that verse, and it's all sorts of out of context, and it's talked about when your friends celebrate. Come on, peeps, that's easy, right? That's super easy. If my girls come home from school with some great news, or Erica, my wife, comes home from work and there's some great news or whatever, I don't have to talk myself up to, I think this is one of those times I'm supposed to be excited for them. I just am, right? If one of my friends calls and says, hey, this happened, I don't have to be, okay, now is this one of the times I'm supposed to? It's just natural, right? With the people you love, it's the easiest thing ever. Paul's writing about doing it with your enemies. So when something good does happen in the life of somebody who makes your life hard, I was like, celebrate that. Celebrate that. When the person who railroaded you and lied about you, and what if when something good and they get an advancement, what if you actually just choose to be a celebrator of it? When they grieve, you grieve, because when there's real hurt, there's real hurt. Man, it's challenging. It's hard. But again, the normal way, right? The normal way is to mourn when our enemies rejoice and to rejoice when our enemies mourn. And Jesus just flipped the script. So actually the way I designed it is that we would identify with each other, that we would experience what each other experienced. So let's rejoice and celebrate and with people who celebrate, and let's grieve when they grieve. And it might be with them in close proximity, and it might just be for them from a distance. What does that look like? What does that look like? Let's go one step further. If you're here in the room and you're a Jesus follower, this is just a question we have to ask on occasion, right? It's a question I have to ask on occasion. If the people who have felt like my enemy, who have tried to make life hard for me or accidentally made life hard for me, am I prepared to rejoice when they really meet Jesus? My church answer is yes. My honest answer is I'm not always sure. I want to be. But it is a light shining on my heart. It is a light shining deep into the recesses of the condition of my soul. And Paul's like, the normal thing is, no, that you don't naturally. The Jesus way is, of course. That's why Jesus has forgiven the people who are actually crucifying him while they're crucifying him. Right? He says, just rejoice with them. Verse 16. He says, live in harmony with one another. Don't be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position, and don't be conceited. I mean, I'll just say, look, if we're going to live with this thing, like the pattern is to like when somebody does evil to you, again, intentionally or unintentionally, it's to figure out where you're right and just anchor in on that and make sure you are right or that your rights are protected. And Paul's saying there's just a better way. The better way would be, again, to take the position of Jesus and just say, let's be humble in that. Let's be humble in that. Let's not always make our first move to defend ourselves and to defend our conveniences and our privileges. And again, Paul's pointing to Jesus because nobody gave up more conveniences and privileges than Jesus. You understand, right? We understand that, right? Just play this out for a second. We have most of us who are joining today, most of us live in America. If we lost everything that we identify as an American right, you understand Jesus still gave up more conveniences and privileges, right? So if anybody can talk about doing this, it'd be Jesus. It's like, hey, for the good of your own soul, for the good of your own life and internal composition, for the good of your own thriving in life, don't fight so hard to protect all of your circumstances and rights that you actually lose the thing that gives you life. Right? We just got to be careful there, right? We talked about this a couple falls ago. We can work so hard to protect our rights that we lose our love. It's just easy. It's a very subtle, slippery slope. And Jesus saying, man, just don't think of yourself too highly. Don't always assume your opinion's perfect. And even when your opinion's right, you don't always have to lead with it. Let's just take again, and Paul's writing in this moment to a group of people who are living in a constant daily struggle about how they will make a living. He's not writing to the monks in a monastery who have nobody to interact with. And then he just plays out the other side, like he flips the thing upside down, starting in verse 17. He says, so at the end of the day, like, don't repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. Try and identify with people. Don't get caught in the trap. The normal thing is evil for evil, but that multiplies evil. It doesn't overcome evil. Verse 18, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. As far as it depends on you. As far as it depends on you. It is not possible to live at peace with everyone. It's okay to acknowledge that. Some people don't want to live at peace with you. As hard as that is, some people don't want to. Some people aren't there yet. Some people won't respond that way. Some people, right? But Paul's just think, look, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Apologize whenever you can. Apologize even when you cause accidental pain, not intentional pain. Apologize when you didn't understand right. Apologize if there was simply a misunderstanding. Like, lead with compassion. Be strong in being anchored to Jesus and not much else. It's like, as far as it depends on you, just as far as it depends on you. You can't make peace happen. But you can make all the efforts that are available to you. Verse 19 says, don't take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it's written, it's mine to avenge, I'll repay. Because God at the end of the day is on your side. God is a God of justice. He's on the side of you. He's on the side of humanity, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. It's like Paul's like doubling down, right? If it was bad enough that I should maybe pray for him or be a blessing, now you want me to tangibly meet their needs, right? If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on your head. Now, doesn't that sound like the point you were waiting for? Come on, where are those coals? Let me pile those on. Here's the thing. In this In the ancient culture, there was this practice that would happen that when somebody came to grips with their own wrong in a situation, when somebody like understood, oh, I was out of line, I missed that, I was wrong. What they would do is they would put a wet rag on their head. They would then put a little basin or bowl on their head, and they would literally put burning coals in the bowl. And the heat would just go into their head, right? They would start to sweat profusely, and they would walk around town that way. And it was their way of saying, and it was their way of showing, look, I was wrong, and I'm letting my mind be detoxed from this wrong. I'm trying to get clear thinking on this. So Paul's not saying like, hey, find some burning coals and put those puppies on there, right? You get bald spots all over the place. Come on. He's saying, no. He's saying, look, if we do this, if we'll live this way, eventually there'll be a lot of people that you feel like are your enemy who will actually have an aha moment. And they will come to the place, partly through the expression of ongoing kindness from you, where they'll say, oof, I was the one I was wrong here. I was wrong. And they'll try and change the thinking, right? The burning coals will be on their head. Paul says, okay, and how we do this, like, right, we bless people and we rejoice with them, we celebrate them, we grieve with them, and he comes back, and here's where we started. He says, because at the end of the day, I don't want you to be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil, with good. It's 7 or 8 lines that identify clearly with how challenging it can be. Paul says, look, there is evil. There are people who are not on your side. And the normal way to respond is evil. What's normal is the thought that evil overcomes evil. That's what's normal. But let's redefine it. If we redefine normal, what we really see, and what we really see inside this passage is that evil multiplies evil, but blessing overcomes evil. Normal is evil overcomes evil. We know that doesn't work. Show me any place that's working today. It doesn't work that way. The life-giving wisdom of Jesus is like, no. What actually works is that evil, just understand that evil multiplies evil, but blessing overcomes evil. Which doesn't mean every person against us, every persecutor is going to change. What it means is that our blessing of them overcomes evil in us. It short circuits the evil in us. It's like becomes the cure and the protection, both the antibiotic and the immune system against evil taking root and sprouting in us. Right? That's why it's as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone, because it's not a guarantee that all of your blessings are going to change the person or the institution or the organization or the group, but the blessing, you blessing them, will overcome evil in you and the opportunity for evil to grow in you. Look, and then it gets a chance. After it's overcome it in you and built in the system in you of blessing, then it gets a chance to go. And again, we know this isn't new to us. This is ancient wisdom, right? Even Martin Luther King Jr. said it, right? It's like the famous, one of his many famous quotes, right? Darkness can't drive out darkness. Only light can do that, right? Hatred can't drive out hate. Only love can do that, right? I mean, evil can't drive out evil. Blessing does that. And it's like Jesus. Let me just read you these words from Jesus. Matthew chapter 5, he said, you're familiar with this old written law and system. Love your friends. And it's an unwritten companion to it. Hate your enemy. Jesus is identifying what's normal in the world. Our default mechanism is hate the enemy. Right? But Jesus says, now wait a second, I'm challenging that. I'm going to take that normal way and I'm going to challenge. I'm going to give you a new normal. I'm telling you to love your enemies. I'm telling you to love your enemies. And thank Jesus that Jesus didn't say that in a vacuum. He went and showed us how. He just went and modeled it to the extreme. I'm telling you, love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with supple, agile moves of prayer. Pray blessing for them, right? Because then you are working out your true selves, your God-created selves. And that's what he does. That's what he does. That's what he does. So it's so very Jesus, right? And here's part of what Jesus is saying is evil cannot drive out evil. Only blessing can do that. Evil can't drive out evil. Only blessing can do that. Let me just ask you a question. Who needs your blessing? Is right now, today in your life, who has felt like over the course of time they've lived either intentionally or maybe very accidentally, causing constant hardship in your life? Emotional, mental, material, physical, job, vocation, school, friendship, whatever the issue is, right? And think big. Think about the world. Like who just far out from you needs your blessing? Who, shrink it down, who inside your sphere of influence, people you actually know, who needs it? Who needs your blessing? And the second question, maybe more importantly, is where do you need to give that blessing? For the vibrancy and the healing, the growth, like the expansion of the life of Jesus in you, where do you need to give the blessing? Where do you need to want somebody's good and their salvation and their life with Jesus? Where do you need to want that for them? Where do you need to want their healing and no longer enjoy watching them wallow in misery and suffering? Where is it that you need the blessing? Is it you need to give the blessing? Who needs your blessing? And where do you need to give the blessing? Listen, because here's the thing. Evil is like waves, and they just keep coming. Life as we know it now is never going to be absent of waves of evil. The question is only going to be, what is the Jesus-defined normal way we can live in that so that we aren't overcome and destroyed and the pace of our life isn't dictated to by that evil? Because evil can't drive out evil. Only blessing does that. Let's just pray on it for a minute. Bow your heads, close your eyes just for a minute. Here,